Hi all, this is Jeannie with Norna Scraps, and I'm going to take a few minutes and show you how I would add borders to my In the Hoop that I created in my Stitch Artist software quilted piece. Okay, I've got my two pieces sewn together. I have my seam pressed open, and I'm going to start thinking about my borders. Well, I like to do it in a more traditional fashion, which means that I'm going to add long side to long side and short side to short side. And I do know that there are some people who do it a little bit differently. It's short side, long side, long side. If you're a new quilter, you'll develop your own rhythm, you'll develop your own pace. You may even develop your own style. I have a friend who goes long side, long side, and then finishes with a short side, just simply overlapping them. It's her signature. It's your choice what you want to do in that respect. But again, I do long side to long side. I return to the more traditional quilting techniques because I cut my border pieces to include a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance on both sides. I know this particular unit still has the 1/2 inch, but I'm going to show you what to do with that in a minute. I also use this really cool stuff called Fusible batting tape. It's flexible, it's very lightweight, and on the back it's kind of rough, so it adheres with a little bit of heat. And I use that to keep my batting from shifting, because the batting will be part of the unbacked project, which after the batting is added to the borders, then we put the backing on the quilt. I have, let me see what, oh, this stuff, if you run out of it, there is, I believe it's called Shape Flex, and I've seen it on the bolt at Joann's. It very closely resembles this open weave mesh that this is, this flexible weave mesh, and in a pinch I've used that. And the nice part about that is I can cut it to any width I want. The last thing is we're going to be doing our batting, and I'll talk a little bit more about the batting when we get there. But when you cut your batting, you absolutely have to have a straight edge, at least on one side. The cut width needs to be slightly larger, 1/4 to 1/2 inch larger than your finished border size. But that one straight edge is imperative. Some battings, I think the higher the loft, the more difficult it's going to be to get that straight edge, which is one reason why I just really prefer Warm and Natural. The batting that I used in my blocks, the one that I told you was available at Joann's, the soft and, hang on, the soft and craft, you can get a reasonably straight cut with a rotary cutter, but there's still a lot of little whispers that come out, and it will make a difference in the way your finished project looks, feels, and handles. So again, Warm and Natural is just simply my favorite. I think I might be wrong here. This is Warm and Natural with the slubs in it. This is Quilter's Dream. But either one is low loft, very stable, cuts great with a rotary cutter. So let's go on to the next step of this process. Alright, for this more traditional method of adding your border pieces, I am going to trim my quilted blocks, the edges, to 1/4 of an inch of a seam allowance. Now I can choose to do this on the back or the front. I happen to be able to see my front on this particular piece, so it's easy. If I want to do it on the back, all I do is look for the outside row of stitching, and place my ruler and trim. And you can see that I'm getting what looks to be like a more traditional, close to being finished but not quite there yet, quilted piece. I always have to make sure my corners are square, because if I don't go back, they're usually not. Okay, just about done. And now, after I get all of it trimmed, I'm going to add my first border piece to my long edge of my quilted block. With my first border piece, right sides to right sides, again, I'm stitching on the back of my quilted piece. The reason I want to do that is because I want everything to line up as it should. So I will be stitching, get this right, sorry about that, in the space between the 2 squares, just like I did when joining my quilted blocks. I'm going to finish this. Okay, I have all of my borders attached with a 1/4" seams to my quilt blocks. I might use this on my table, I don't know. Except for that, I really kind of like it. And now I'm going to add my batting. Now there's a trick to adding the batting. You can see batting up to here. Well, my border batting is going to have to extend from the stitched line, which is this, should be where my seam is, to the outside edge. Remember what I said about needing that one line, that one cut edge to be perfectly straight. I'm going to take my batting and I'm going to place it all the way up to the edge. And then I'm going to place it along the stitched line along the stitched line. And I'll be able to feel it. If my finger drops off suddenly, then I'm not quite there. And there's a couple ways I can handle this at this point. I need it to go the entire long length, if that's the one I'm going to do first. So from the cut edge to the cut edge, or I can piece it along the way. And if I have to piece it, like I might, if this were much longer, I'd probably have to piece it right there. It would be done exactly as I'm going to do up here, and I'm going to show you that one. So I have my border in place, and for now I'm just going to pin it into my seam allowance, because part of this is going to be accomplished at the ironing board. And then I'm going to take and I'm going to put the other piece of batting, and I know it's not long enough, across. And you see that they're overlapped right here at the corner. See that? And that's okay. I want it to be like that. But again, I'm going to pin it into my seam. And I'm going to take care of that in just a few minutes, okay? Now, before I do anything else, I'm going to take from here to here, or yeah, somewhere across there, probably from there to the end, to the corner, and I'm going to cut kind of a zigzaggy line through both layers of batting, but not through my fabric. Okay, see that? I cut through both layers of batting, but not through my fabric. And now to get it to the ironing board is not going to be a problem because it is pinned into my seam allowance. We'll just do it right here too. So I'm going to go to the ironing board, and I'll meet you there. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Fusible from my quilt batting, and I am going to fix this jagged line. I cannot, when I'm cutting, and this is, only you would know this by the width of your Fusible, I can't cut any wider than the total width. So in other words, my zigzag would have to fit into there. I'm going to place my Fusible across it, and I'm going to press it down, just simply placing my iron on it. And it does not take much heat. It does not take much heat. Now I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to trim that. Now I'm going to take my pins out, just set them aside for now, and across the entire length up to the corner, right there, where I don't know if you can see it. There you go. Up to the corner, which if I had batting all the way, I would go to there. I'm going to place a piece of the Fusible, fusing it off the edge to my no-show mesh. So, and I can't let it sit too long because that no-show mesh, and no steam, by the way, no steam, and I love steam, so it's hard for me to do this. But I want that batting. It takes a little practice to get it right up to the edge, but what's going to happen is this is going to keep it from shifting. So then I'm going to do the entire length, sorry, really bad. No real studio, someday maybe. I'm going to do the entire length of this batting. Again, I'm going to remove my pins, and I'm going to make sure it's up to my seam stitching, making sure the fusible web is down. Done that too. And just press it down. All the way to the end. And being very careful not to get a pin and caught in there. I know I'm not done. I get it. But my room is starting to get really hot. Now at the end of my quilt, if I haven't pieced this, again, I would fusible up to the corner of my first border, and then I would continue. And remember, the key is you have to do the entire border length. Whether this is pieced or not is irrelevant. When you put it down and you're starting to fuse it to your quilt, you have to have your border batting the same length as the piece that you're doing. You then go from the inner border to the outer border, zigzag, and fuse it together. Then when you're done, it's really hard to tell where that piecing has come. Now I could go back and I could add some quilt basting spray there, and I could go back, I could just keep going all the way around. Quilt basting spray works really well because it does hold it nice and tightly against that batting. When I turn this over, I'm going to set this whole piece, I'll trim it, and then I'll set the whole piece on my backing fabric. I can quilt in the ditch here, quilt in the ditch here, and if I want, depending on the width of my borders, I can quilt here. I can also quilt in the ditch across here when I have my backing on my fabric. After it's done, I shouldn't say, I wouldn't have trimmed it before, I'm sorry. I would only trim it when everything is quilted. Then I go in and I true up all my edges, and I add my binding, and I'm done. It's good to go. I hope you've learned something, and I hope this helps you finish many, many, many more quilts. Until next time.